In part one of this two-part video series, we recorded 3 different guitars with humbucker pickups. We just did the bridge pickup, and they were at what I would call widely differing price points. We had a vintage Gibson. A vintage guitar dealer told me the pickups alone were probably worth $800 to $1,000. We're going to call that one our expensive vintage pickup. And we had another guitar that I had put an aftermarket pickup into. I paid about $120 or $130 for that aftermarket pickup. It was in a custom color, so that made it a little bit more expensive than normal. But nonetheless, that's what I paid for it. And then our third pickup was in a cheap Asian import that the entire guitar cost me about 120 bucks. And we did a blind test. We called them guitars A, B, and C, and then we recorded the intros to 2 different songs, one with a high gain structure, one with a low gain, edge of breakup type sound. We did Breaking the Law by Judas Priest for high gain. We did What I Like About You by the Romantics for the low gain, and we'll listen to those again in just a minute so we can hear the different guitars back to back. The objective was to determine, are the sounds in those guitars good enough for a cover band to use? And are there any major differences between the $119 guitar and the vintage guitar that's valued at who knows what? By the end of that video, I concluded all 3 of them had perfectly usable sounds for a good cover band to use in a normal cover band environment. I'm talking bars, bowling alleys, community centers, backyard parties, and so on. Before we jump back in, though, and do our back-to-back comparison, I want to point something out from the last video. Guitar B had dead strings on it. They were like 3 years old, and I was lazy, didn't change the strings, went ahead and recorded the 2 songs. That's what you were hearing on that part 1 of this video. After I posted it, I started feeling guilty about that and decided to change the strings on Guitar B. I'm going to play a couple clips for you from when I changed the strings so you can actually hear the difference acoustically between the old strings and the new strings. After I changed the strings, I went back in, I re-recorded Breaking the Law with high gain, I re-recorded What I Like About You on the edge of breakup sound, and we're going to drop those into our comparison today. We're going to do Guitar B old strings, then Guitar B new strings, see what kind of tone difference that made, see if that affects how you felt about the original comparison at all. You could hear that, right? That was a pretty pronounced difference. I'm pretty sure that the mic on the camera picked up enough of the difference that you should be able to hear it. Before we do the old string versus new string comparison, let's go back and listen to the original recordings of the guitars back to back with both high gain and then low gain. All right, that was the 3 guitars back to back. Now let's do just Guitar B with the old strings versus the new strings back to back. So for me, the biggest surprise was not the slightly brighter sound that you heard with the new strings, but the difference in volume. I don't know how well this will translate over the internet, over YouTube, junky computer speakers, phone speakers, laptop speakers, whatever, but there's a pronounced difference in volume. I expected it to be slightly brighter, so the recorded tone was really, really close to what it was before. There was more high end, there was more clarity, but the biggest difference was in the volume. Just a quick reminder, I didn't change anything on the amps between guitars. All I did was unplug one guitar and plug the other one in. So the recording rig, the guitar rig, everything stayed exactly the same except for the guitar. All right, that's enough yammering. Which guitar is which? Here's guitar A. This is the Ashland by Crafter. It's Chinese import. I paid about 120 bucks for this guitar. That's your guitar A in both examples. So guitar B in all the audio samples that you heard was the vintage Gibson. As you can see, I didn't even clip the new strings yet. I wanted to get that recorded so I could get this edited and posted as soon as possible. So if you're really good at figuring things out by process of elimination, no doubt you have figured out that this is guitar C with the aftermarket pickup. So what was the objective of this whole exercise? The objective was to encourage you guys to use your ears more for purchasing decisions instead of relying on magazine reviews or things that you've read online about how you have to have a $3,500 guitar and a $3,500 amp head and a $2,000 cabinet and $6,000 worth of pedals to get a decent sound. I'd really encourage you guys to just listen. And if it sounds good to you, if you think you can get useful sounds out of a piece of gear, then that's the one you should buy, not necessarily the one that everybody gushes about online. If you're just starting out in your music career, whether you're a teenager or maybe you've been playing for a few years, but now you're in your 30s and you're actually in your first band, whatever, don't let the fear of not having good enough equipment keep you from going out and doing gigs. One time my band played a showcase in Milwaukee, and the room wasn't very big, maybe held 400 people. And the band before us came on with 4 full stacks for their 2 guitar players. The bass player had 2 810 cabinets for his rig. Both the guitar players had 42-inch racks full of high-end exotic effects. Their pedal boards looked like they belong in a science fiction movie, and they couldn't understand why they weren't getting much applause. Well, I'll tell you why. They weren't getting much applause because the guitar player was ahead of the beat, the bass player was behind the beat, the singing was off-key, they weren't in tune with each other. There was probably $50,000 worth of equipment on stage for their 30-minute set. And that didn't help them because they weren't tight. When my band went on, we were using combo amps, and I had maybe 3 pedals on my board for that because it was a 30-minute set. I didn't need my big pedal board. We hit the stage, we were tight, we roared through our set, we didn't dink around playing with knobs and stuff. We absolutely smoked those guys. And we got the best reaction out of the night, and it was because our band was tight. If you're trying to be a working musician, and you don't have the budget for all that high-end stuff, find stuff that sounds good, find stuff that feels good to you, and get with some other guys. Practice until you're super tight, and then get out and put on a good show. You will do far better than the guys who spend all their time researching whether the wire in their pickups is made from the proper blend of copper and unobtainium or whatever. So for just a minute, let's talk about whether I would gig with any of these guitars. Well, this one, obviously, I have gigged with a lot. I've done hundreds of shows with this thing. This is my main workhorse guitar these days. And this guitar, the SG Deluxe, I've done hundreds, maybe thousands of gigs with this guitar. I don't gig with this guitar anymore because it's considered a vintage collectible instrument, and I don't want it damaged or stolen. So when I play out live these days, I use guitars that I can actually go into a guitar center if necessary and buy a replacement just like it. Would I gig with this guitar, the $119 guitar? Absolutely. However, that said, I will say that if the set list included lots of Van Halen or Pantera or anything where the original recordings had Floyd Rose or some other type of floating trem, this probably would not be the right guitar for that job. This guitar would be just fine for covering ZZ Top and Stevie Ray Vaughan, Black Sabbath, AC/DC, Tom Petty, Journey. You could cover Foo Fighters. I mean, there's a ton of artists out there that this guitar would be absolutely fine in terms of getting the sounds you need to cover their songs. Look, I'm not saying that you shouldn't buy nice equipment. What I'm saying is don't put yourself in financial jeopardy to get some status symbol guitar or amp that you really can't afford. So the bottom line is this. Don't miss out on the joy of being in a band with a bunch of guys you like, playing music that you like, getting in front of audiences and having fun, watching them having fun. Don't miss out on all of that because you have a fear of showing up in public with something that's not a prestige brand of guitar or amp. Your audience isn't going to know whether you're playing a $600 Samick or a $6,000 Gibson, and they don't care. What they care about is how well you're playing and how much fun you're having within the band and interacting with the audience. So do the best you can do with the stuff you can afford. And the bottom line, like I said, is just getting out and gigging and having fun. So I've been yammering long enough. I'm going to go play my guitar and have some fun. Until next time, you guys live well and rock hard. I'll see ya.